Hi, Dr. John Alchemy with RateFast. Today we're going to continue on our educational series with activities of daily living, and I wanted to talk a little bit today about this concept of interpolation. Interpolation is something that you don't hear about very often in impairment rating, but it is central and paramount to creating impairment ratings. Not a lot of people understand this. This is why I wanted to talk about it. In the AMA guides, if you turn to page 20, you're actually going to see some mathematical guidelines on how to do the processing of the values. And one of those terms there is interpolating. Now, some of you may or may not remember the concept or what interpolating is, but in a simple essence, what it is, it's two coordinates on a graph, and you draw a straight line between those 2 points. And you know the endpoints, so you know the two coordinates, x and y, at one point and x and y at the other point, and you've drawn a line. So the benefit now that if you know these two endpoints, then if you have at least one value of x or one value of y, you can solve it using the slope of the line to determine what the missing value is. Why is this important? Well, an impairment rating, as we've discussed in some of the earlier videos, is that sometimes when we're doing an impairment rating, there's a range of values, and you're trying to figure out, well, is it 10 or is it 15? Is it 9 or is it 22? You know, there's all these different ranges, usually in what's called class ratings. So the interpolating starts to become paramount now when you have a range, because if you're not sure what your WPI is, but you know the low end and the high end, and you know the corresponding ADL count, then you can figure out what the whole person impairment rating is. So better than just guessing, saying, oh, well, the number's between 10 and 13. I think it's 11, okay? That's very hard to reproduce unless you have some basis for that, some mathematical basis, and something that can be reproduced and understood by the other stakeholders if it's brought into question. So if you're using interpolation and you know that the lower number is 10 and the upper number is 15, and the ADL count, okay, is maybe 6 out of 34, okay, you can use interpolation. You can say, oh, it's 11, okay? And that's basically how you can use interpolation to reproducibly create and explain the impairment ratings. So again, the two main things we've talked over prior about activities of daily living is activities of daily living is just really another way of calculating a whole person impairment. And so those two are basically the coordinates when you're creating that straight line, because each WPI has a corresponding ADL value. And we have both ends of the WPI ranges. We know both ranges of the ADLs once we know the WPI. And then we can put in any ADL value between the low and the high end and simply convert it to the WPI. Now, one thing I want to clarify is that there's a difference between the concept of interpolation and extrapolation. So interpolation, in between, means that we're looking at values and creating values within the two endpoints on that line I was talking about. Extrapolation means that we're going outside of those 2 points, either higher or lower on the slope of the line. And we do that in impairment rating in other areas too, but the concept is the same. And so what you're doing is you're basically projecting either above or below the high and the low points of the impairment rating. And again, it's a way of standardizing the results of the interpolation and hence the whole person impairment. Again, I bring this up because I have never seen anyone talk or explain about the concept of interpolation in the AMA guides. It's very important, and in standardization of ratings, RateFast uses interpolation all the time. Every single rating. And in fact, interpolation is central in California to determining the Almaraz-Guzman scores. It's also used for apportionment. It's basically used in every aspect of the report, but it just doesn't get talked about a lot. And that's really why I wanted to bring it up today. Now, customization of impairment ratings, how does interpolation play into that? Well, if you think of each injury as having a very specific injury signature is what we call it in RateFast. And an injury signature is simply 4 digits. The first digit is the pain score, 0 to 10. The second digit is a percentage of frequency, and that goes all the way from 25% up to 100. That's the second digit. The third digit is activities of daily living pain only, and we've talked about that in another video, what that means. Basically, your ADL is completed, but you do have some pain. And then that fourth digit in the rating signature is activities of daily living limited, meaning that either your rate or your endurance has been affected by your injury. And once you have these four digits, they can be placed into the interpolation formula, and you can customize any impairment rating down to the nearest whole person impairment. And that's really what customizes and creates accuracy of the AMA guides. And RateFast has incorporated that into the process every time we do a report. But again, not a lot of people understand, how this is applied, why it's applied, or specifically how to do it. So anyway, learn about interpolation and you will learn about the accuracy of impairment rating. Now, what's the downside of interpolation? Many of the questions I get from stakeholders, insurance carriers, adjusters, patients, doctors sometimes, is that they've forgotten what the formula of interpolation is. And so you kind of have to go back. Interpolation is like an 8th grade concept in math, and get those coordinates explained to the stakeholder. And in my experience, having done this now for 15 years, once you explain this concept to the stakeholder, you usually don't get any letters back of clarification. In fact, I've never really had any problems, even come back from the disability evaluation unit, the unit that does the impairment rating checking for primary treater reports. So the whole point of today was to talk about interpolation, how it fits into activities of daily living, how you calculate a whole person impairment, and how you get reproducible, accurate impairment ratings because of interpolation. I hope this was helpful. We'll see you next time.